Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Welcome to the December board meeting. I'm pleased to see around the table the absence of paper cups, just so we've all got our reusable cups around the table, so to make sure the board is following on the appropriately green agenda. So thank you for that, and thank you for Howard for reminding us all to respect the environment. We've got a public meeting. We've got various people joining us on Teams, so I hope we're being received by our colleagues who have joined us online and members of the public. Also welcome members of the public and staff who have joined us today as well. Really good to see you, and hopefully you gained something from listening to the proceedings. Also, if I can also welcome Ben Westmancott, who's here conducting our well-led review, and online is also Louise Thatcher, who's part of that review from the governance team who are assisting us. We have apologies from Ali Mohammed, who is attending his daughter's graduation, but as always we've got strength in depth, though Tim Widdowson is standing in, and hopefully Tim is online and supported by Tina Ivanov, who's around the table, so welcome Tina. Tom is joining us online, so good morning Tom. Are we being received? Well, okay, that's fantastic, thank you. I don't think with apologies too from Chris Gond and Max as well. Right, so if we can move on then to the main items on the agenda. First of all, the minutes of the last meeting. Are they a true and accurate record? Peter? Hopefully. Are you all happy that yes, they are true and accurate? You've read them all, checked them, good. Thank you. The action log, please.
Yeah, Chairman, just in terms of the action, so there is, as stated, nothing to pick up specifically. One item that will be covered on the agenda later, others are for future meetings.
Thank you. You're content with that? Thank you. Just in terms of the chair report, just to set the scene for this meeting, just remind colleagues that the support documents in the pack are there to help you with your questions. So the performance report, particularly that's in the pack, is there to help us with our discussions. The items are discussed under our strategic objectives, and please try and make your questioning as information led as possible as we work our way through the agenda. You'll see in my report that in terms of the last month, we have been very much engaged in board development work. We've got the well-led review in place, and that's important that the board continues its developments and ensures that we're a fit and proper organisation going forward and led in the right way. We've had our Council of Governors have also had their council meeting and have raised some areas of concern, areas of risk, which again have been dealt with as part of the agenda. And under the wider heading of engagement, I think one thing that I really, both the Chief Executive and I and other members of the executive team attended the volunteer conference we held in Sussex a few weeks ago. And I have to say, it was the most uplifting event and a huge contrast to where we had been with our volunteer workforce in years gone by, and it felt a really united team. Really impressed by the leadership of the volunteer function of our community first responders and other volunteers that are in the organisation. So it was a great day celebrating their work, shared education event, and it really felt we really were one team. So congratulations and thank you to all those involved in leadership of our volunteer workforce. I thought it was an excellent event, and a number of you contributed to that event as well. So I'm most grateful for that. And again, I've just put in the report items of personal engagements which I've done on behalf of the Trust with various national and local bodies. So that sort of sets the scene with an important underlying theme today around staff welfare, staff engagements. How do we celebrate the work of our staff is one of the major themes of today's meeting. So I hope that's clear. So Peter, the next item, the Fit and Proper Persons Framework.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So just by way of introduction, so the paper's in the pack, I won't talk to it specifically. other than to say that the framework supplements and strengthens the existing fit and proper persons test. As Trust Secretary, together with HR Director, will help to support the implementation, but Chair is ultimately accountable, hence why it's this order on the agenda. The Appointments Committee is the committee of the board that will be responsible for oversight. The committee met last month, I think it was, beginning of last month, to consider a version of this paper and supported the proposals. The framework helps, I guess, standardise the approach across the NHS for both providers, ICSs, and now NHSE and the CQC. So, for example, it's using ESR as the repository now for the relevant information checks and so on that we can draw reports from. It requires more open reporting, both to the Board, Council of Governors, and in our annual report. While much of the focus is on how we apply the test on an annual cycle linked to the year-end appraisals, I think it's important to stress that the fit and proper persons test that remains unchanged by the framework it is ongoing and continuous. There are new templates and approaches that will be used when we apply the framework as part of the end-of-year appraisals, and a report will come to this board early in the new financial year to set out the extent to which we've complied with the regulation. And then lastly, Chairman, just to reflect the local nuances in approach. So the framework is for all, but there'll be local nuances in terms of roles and responsibilities, and we're going to set all of that out in a policy that we're currently drafting, and that will be in place over the next few weeks.
I mean, if I should give colleagues a chance just to come back, just to check that you're clear with the requirements. At its heart, this is about holding public office and holding standards in public life. And those of us who sit around this table, we're in a privileged position. It might not feel like that at times when you're dealing with the cut and thrust of the NHS and the challenges that we all face, but we are in a privileged position around this table, and with that go standards of personal behaviour, standards of professional behaviour, which have to be above reproach, and we all have a past, and that past is going to travel with us as part of it away. So there's no doubt, our professional reputations, your professional reputations are dear to you. You've worked hard. We've worked hard to be in this position. The important thing is that's open and transparent, and people are aware of that, and that's a part of, that underlines this process. So there are no concerns about integrity of anybody that makes the big decisions in the NHS. The people around this table, at the end of the day, we've got to lead thousands of staff and provide a safe patient service. So it's really important that we go beyond the mechanics of the process and understand the drivers behind it. But what it's about standards in public life. And we've got one or two other items on the agenda today which actually further enforce the need for good working arrangements and the need for proper standards. The Sexual Safety Charter is but one, but it's important why we just acknowledge that as a board. So, colleagues, are you happy? Are you content with the process? Is there anything you want to check about the issue? It's all, we do it now. We do appraisals, we do references. It just means there's going to be a bit more rigour in that, and those references travel with us on our career journey.
Chair, I've got one question. I really support this. It's really important in terms of improving governance and accountability. Just drawing on my previous executive experience, references are not what they used to be. I find that people put in references the minimum amount that they can get away with because people are often worried about litigation or, I don't know, a load of issues. So you really do have to follow it up with personal conversations with people who have previously been in a management or leadership responsibility for the candidates that we are considering. So I just would add, references are fine, but you do need to actually have those detailed conversations.
I think part of the process will be we all have to have on file a reference when we move from this organisation that we get sight of. But so there can be no doubt about anyone's credentials going forward, and that's the key thing. In the past, these things were lost in smoke and mirrors. Now it's on the record, and there's been other events in the NHS which we've got to make sure that there's no doubt about people's integrity. So that's the key thing. Any other questions before we move on with that? So that's the process. It's just codifying what we do now. It just means it's good practice. So we move forward on that. Right, let's move on now to the Chief Executive report. Simon?
Morning, thanks, David. A few items to draw out as by way of context for today's discussion at the board. But before I get to those, I just want to, on behalf of us all, extend a huge thank you to the frontline crews who are, despite continuing pressure, which obviously raises at this time of year, are delivering our C30 mean standard. And we, along with the Isle of Wight, who I am told I have to use as a comparator, but it doesn't feel like a particularly fair one, are the last left standing in terms of delivering the C30 mean at this point in the year. It's easy to say, but we should all be under no illusion about how much effort it takes on the front line to deliver that. And I know we're going to get into a debate about winter and its difficulty and all of that, but I just wanted to start by saying it's important that we recognise that achievement and that ongoing achievement. So to all of you who are out there who are day-to-day delivering, you have our thanks, and for all of your efforts we are truly grateful. Board, we're debating a number of things today, and I just want to draw out, I suppose, some questions that I have as I think about them. My report I'm happy to pick up and take as read, but I just want to pick up some questions. So the first thing I just wanted to drop on was the retention plan. This is the third chapter in our debate about retention of our workforce. The long-term NHS workforce plan has its 3 R's at the heart: recruit, reform, retain. So we are very squarely in the retain element of the debate today. And I would encourage us all in that debate to think, have we been ambitious enough? Is this the very best that we can do? Because up and down the country, people will be debating retention. And I'm glad that Tim and Tina can join us, particularly given the work that they're doing. But that, for me, feels like a critical question that we answer. If we do the things that are contained in the plan, do we feel it will make a difference? We are going to also debate my second point today, 2 items of what I would call infrastructural support services, depending on how we phrase it. We're taking today an IT report and also the Hart-Narrow report. And I just simply want us to remember that although I started my comments by referring to the frontline staff, there are lots of different front lines in an organisation. And one of the things I want us to think about here is, as we think about our front line, we also need to think about, have we got the calibration right, the balance right, in terms of making sure that our support services are tooled up to help support our front line. So I want us to receive the report in that spirit. The report has challenges and also identifies some issues for us as a board. These are not the only places where we may have gaps in our support services, and as part of the structure review that I referred to later on in my report, I've asked the executive not only to think about the areas that we're talking about today, but more broadly where we may have gaps in our infrastructure that we will need to address going forward. In addition to our performance, we are also obviously landing a financial year, and comparatively we are still in a pretty fortunate position financially, so it behoves us to continue to work on and deliver that, but be under no illusion that that road is running out, and as we approach 2024-25, we are going to have to think very significantly differently about our operating model if we are to live within the financial framework that the NHS looks likely to set. Which leads me on to the strategy. We have and continue to talk extensively about the strategy. We have reached the end of phase 1, and I close out phase 1 this evening with the ICB chief executives to formally endorse that we have described a problem that everybody recognises and needs to be solved, and we then head on into, if we all agree there is a problem, what does the future then look like, the design phase. And that for me is where we really need to put our creative thinking caps on. I want to thank and commend the engagement from our ICB colleagues. It has been fulsome, so I cannot fault their energy, commitment, time that they've given us to debate our future. It's been really excellent, and it's heartening because some of the issues that we'll be debating we can only solve with their assistance and their support, and I've really felt that. So it's a really good place for us to be. We've done a lot of engagement internally as well. We'll talk a bit more about that. And the team is fresh off the back of a couple of days of a hackathon to try and start thinking about options for the future, which hopefully we'll start to get to the really interesting bit about, if not that, then this. So a really important opportunity for us to mark the progress that's been made and start to look towards the future. I'll conclude with just a couple of points, if I may. The first, we're also signing up today to something that is both a moment but very definitely a process, the Sexual Safety Charter. It's important that we make a public statement of our commitment to that, no question. But what's even more important is that once we've made that commitment, we then pay attention to it on an ongoing basis. This is not something that the board sees, looks at, signs off, and then disappears into a dusty cupboard, never to see the light of day again. This is something that has to flow right throughout the work that we do as an organisation going forward. Finally, again, just to end on a note of thanks, we were very pleased to welcome Amanda Pritchard, the Chief Executive of NHS England, to our Medway Centre recently. I know that she has communicated to both David and myself how impressive she found the facility, the quality of the staff, the visit as a whole, in demonstrating what could be done when you both integrate services together. And I know she saw on the front line some of the work of what our crews do and was, again, hugely impressed. So my thanks to Lawrence and his team for hosting the visit on that day. It's really important that we demonstrate what the ambulance sector can do, and there's no doubt that our team in Medway did that. Thank you.
I think for the records as well, she actually listened into some calls in 909 and 111, and so the call centre staff as well in both on both floors were also suitably engaged. Now, questions of the Chief Executive of this report. Anything you wish to clarify or seek further clarification, Sybil?
Thank you, Chair. It's not clarification, it's a question. Simon, thank you for your report. It's always good to read it. As you have raised Sexual Safety Charter, perhaps I can ask you a question. So we've embarked on some sexual safety training, and not every member of staff has been trained in that yet. It appears to be having some impact, but sadly, and I speak this time as the Freedom to Speak Up NED, still cases are coming through around sexual behaviours, inappropriate sexual behaviours. So I want to know, these are very laudable principles in the Charter. What are we going to do that will implement those principles quickly and have an even bigger impact?
I think we need to pick this up, obviously, in the section which Margaret will lead, but maybe the general comments, Simon, just your commitments.
So I think the key point that you've made is, what are we going to do? Because this is truly a we. So I think I will defer the debate in full to the section on it, so I don't do it a disservice. But this is an issue that has, I think, has now become really visible in the NHS as a whole, not just in CCAM. It was probably visible in the ambulance sector before it was visible in the NHS, I think, chronologically, but it is now being picked up in the entirety of the NHS. And I think, I don't think there's a quick or easy answer here. That's the other thing I would say. I think one of the things I would counsel us against, I think, is thinking that training, important though it is going to be the thing that solves this. I think it is the work of some years and a sustained effort, but more than that, I think I would be presaging upon Margaret's territory, so I'm going to defer the debate until that point.
Thank you, Simon. Any other? Howard? Howard then, Michael?
Thank you. I had a question. Again, I'm not sure whether you want to answer it now or defer it to the relevant section, but it was around the HSE report, particularly around the bariatric training and manual handling. And it's not so much the points that they've raised that I'm concerned about. It's about what it means and how we get into a situation, we find ourselves in a situation where something that, as a independent NED, something that you would assume, I think is reasonable to assume, that has been implemented and you assume is continuing, is for some reason stopped. And it seems fairly fundamental, bariatric training to me. It's sorts of things that presumably a lot of frontline staff do all the time. And so my concern is, how do we get into a situation where something that we assume is continuing stops? Because what else, the worry for me is, well, what else is there that should be being done that is suddenly stopped?
So again, I'm reporting it today because it was publicly commented upon. I need to stress that it has yet to go through the process of board committee, and at this stage we're due to write back to the HSE on the 13th of January. What I will say here is that the questions that you have asked are the ones that are concerning me and the executive team. So in order, firstly, there is a plan that needs to be produced. We are not in a position to debate that today. That is due back to the HSE by the 13th of January. But obviously I've asked the questions that you've asked, Howard, which are, what else could there be? And in that context, we will be commissioning shortly a review of the health and safety framework that's in the whole organisation, because although this was a specific and quite limited visit, obviously the question arises, could there be other things that we don't know? And so that will report in due course, but we are slightly in the place of alerting people, and then in the board cycles in January and into February, we'll be debating both the action plan to deal with the immediate remedy, which is the formal piece of regulation that we need to respond to. But more importantly, we will be debating, are there things that we don't know that should be concerning us? I am sufficiently clear already that, going back to the point I made about infrastructure and gaps, our ability to effectively oversee that regulatory environment in a way I would like is probably needs strengthening, but I need some more time with the team to work out how and in what way to get it fixed.
Yeah, I mean, there are specific things that will need to be fixed and so on. That's normal. To me, it's like a behavioural thing that's sort of in the background, that's sort of saying, what is it in somebody's culture or nature that says, I'm doing this and I'm going to just stop doing it for no apparent reason?
So all I would counsel us at this stage is let's hold the debate at the right moment when the facts and information are available to us. I am sure that there are individual issues at stake here. Equally, I'm sure there are also systemic issues. There always are a combination of those. I just need to be clear, we're not yet in a position to have that debate because it requires and should require a properly serious scrutiny of what has occurred here.
Okay.
And we will do that, and it will come back through, as I said, initially the January board committee cycle with the action plan, and then depending on how long it takes us to commission the answer to the question of, which I think you're asking, how did we get here then? I expect that sometime in February or March, but we need to commission the answer to that question.
Cool. Thanks.
So the important thing is it's receiving attention and it will be tracked. Michael.
I just want to, before I answer my question, build on Howard's point, because I think it's a really interesting point. I make a number of observations. There are stuff coming to this board, the Narrow report, the report on digital health and safety, that are consuming a lot of board time, which they shouldn't, and that, you know, they should be routine activities that are appropriately managed within the organisation. I made that comment because I really want to set the scene for where I think we need to get to in 12 to 18 months' time. And, you know, really support Simon in his observation that this is going, not observation, stronger than that this is going to take time and we need to get to the root cause. And I agree it's about culture. The one thing that does concern me, and it is a systemic issue, and, you know, I'm chair of the audit committee and want to talk to Peter about this. Some of this stuff should be dealt with by the normal assurance framework that exists within the organisation. And what this says to me is we haven't got to that yet. So as we move forward and we resolve some of the issues raised by these three reports, we need to be confident that our overall assurance programme that reports to the committees is effective, not only on looking retrospectively, but also looking forward about emerging risks. And I think we could strengthen that further. It's not a criticism, it's an observation of where we are, and it is something that we need to do more about, I think.
I agree, Michael, and yesterday we took the risk analysis, and clearly the normal extreme risks are in the board papers. I'm not going to debate those here and now. In actual fact, it's funny you should say what you did, because yesterday I've asked the team through Margaret, Ruby and Peter to convene a workshop session across the executive to look both at the year-end risks.
Yep.
So as we cash out the year, both from an operational and a financial perspective, we need to look at our risks. But also, as you rightly say, to start thinking in horizon scanning terms about what are the risks that lie ahead. I would make the observation, and I said this to the team yesterday, there are still a large number of risks that are, this isn't backing up your point, I suppose, that are escalated to an extreme level. And that for me is the sign of a culture that is still maturing. Whereas as the culture matures, I would expect some of those risks to be held at a much more operational level in the organisation.
Yeah.
We got into that debate precisely yesterday, and I would expect us to be cycling back through that with board input and contribution, particularly as we look at the horizon scanning around the risks as we head towards closing out the year.
Yeah. Thank you. I take that assurance. And very quickly, not to prolong, my question really is for David. Really impressed by all that we're doing on the strategy and to get the sign-off by the ICBs that we've analysed the issue. Two things that come from Simon's report. Very impressed by the perfect month, November. It was at Ashford that was leading on that. My question is, are we putting in a proper evaluative framework around that so that we can learn the lessons? Because it does seem to me this may offer one of the solutions. And my second question is just to give assurance that you know, you've got a very ambitious timetable to get this strategy delivered. Are you confident you've got the resources that you need and that the timetable is still viable?
David, if you can do with the strategy, Emma will comment on the perfect month.
Thank you. I'll pick up the strategy first. Of course, I'd love more time and more resources, but I think we are in a good, strong position with our case for change, and we've done good headway with the hackathons and some sessions we've had with the exec team around what we think the future needs to start looking at. We will be obviously looking at that in part 2 in the meeting, because we'll start to have a look at in advance. So I think we're in a relatively strong position. The important message from me about this is we will have a plan and direction of travel, and we will have a strategy published by the end of March. But the work doesn't stop there. The work will have to then continue, and I think that's something that we are trying to impose, because we don't talk enough about what's our strategy. And I think that's part of the issues that we've had historically is, yes, then we have a vision, but then we need to relentlessly be talking about that vision and the work we're doing to achieve it. Because there's going to be inevitably going to be more level of detail to be delivered. There needs to be a consistency of narrative. And some of the infrastructure that we're setting up now, a lot of the engagement is happening, as I described, at a local level. So we have local engagement leads who are doing great work locally. My message to them is none of us, I can't do this alone, the board can do this by ourselves. Everybody needs to be driving in the same direction. So I'm just going to caution that I'm not too scared about the time frame, because I don't necessarily see this as finishing by the end of March. I see it this beginning, at the end of March.
Thank you. Realistic. Emma, then Paul, then I'll need to move us on. We've a lot on the agenda today, so I want to keep us to time. Emma?
Yes, just briefly. Yes, there is an evaluation framework, and this is actually a tripartite conversation, because as much as we are hosting, this is, to be very, really clear, this is to support East Kent, as much as it is to make us more efficient and effective. And actually, Margaret and I went down and visited East Kent. We've been down twice in the last 3 weeks, because East Kent is in a tier 1 position. So this is absolutely being seen as part of the overall system solution, or part of that for improving both handovers and activity into the ED. But actually, a really interesting observation was that the virtual wards are now filling very quickly, because they're getting patients to the right place for the right care. So the system is really interesting.
Okay, thank you for that.
Well, I mentioned that in my report, and I have to say, as a layperson observing the work that was going on, I really felt I was a glimpse in the future, that we had a multidisciplinary team looking at the stack of patients, making informed clinical decisions, and informed by some of our clinicians. Very much part of that as an equal partner with the consultants, geriatrician and an A&E consultants, which I've never seen before in my career in the NHS, and I thought that was really impressive. And the patients we were avoiding taking them to hospital, but getting them the right care. So it really is, there's something in this we've got to scale up, I think, once it's been properly evaluated, and that's your point. Paul?
Yeah, the case for change is a really important cornerstone of our strategy. So I was wondering how well it was understood, both externally and internally. And I don't think it's anything new, this. I just wondered if we'd looked historically, because this has been happening for a number of years, and if we could actually say this is fact. I just wondered how it was landing with our partners.
Well, I think is the short answer. I could go on at great length because, well, if I characterise it as thus, I had probably 45 minutes at each ICB board. All of those sessions overran, and I take that in a positive light because of the interest in debating both what the issues were and our role in helping them sort out the future. So it's axiomatic to say that any engagement process could go better because there's always more that you could do. But genuinely, as I come to the end of this, and having attended all the boards myself in the last 3 weeks, I couldn't be more pleased with the level of engagement and the level of reciprocity that I've seen from our ICB colleagues.
That's excellent. Yeah.
I certainly back that up based on the last 5.5 years' experience of talking to the predecessor bodies and the current bodies. The level of connection between us, I think, is impressive. I think there's more to do further into the organisations. I think our EUMs, for instance, are doing a fantastic job with local health leaders. I think we've work to do still within the business side of between ourselves and our commissioners. But I have to say we've been in a place where we haven't been, certainly my time in CCAM. Very impressed with the work that David and the team have done. And there's a genuine, and plus supported by executive colleagues. I mean, there's clinical conversations happening all the time about patients, about patient quality. And I do think we are in a much better position now. What we've got to do is make sure we realise that and that potential. Let's move on, please. To the very important section, improving culture. Just to remind colleagues that the Board Assurance Framework and the Integrated Quality Reports are there to inform your questions and of the executive as we move into this, and of each other, of course. It's not just the executive. We're not here just to question executives. Non-executives can ask questions of each other as well. Let's move on to the improving culture and the board story, which is, I think, Janine, you're going to introduce. I do apologise.
I get to introduce it for once, because normally I don't say anything at this point. It's a pleasure to. No, it's fine. It's a pleasure to introduce this board story genuinely. So I think obviously we've just completed the 2023 awards season. Big thanks to the comms team and in particular Liz Spears for an excellent production values. They were extraordinarily high. As I've said, I've been in the NHS 27 years and they are the best awards I've ever been to, so truly something to cherish and be proud of. But this year, I am told, this was the first time they were being filmed, which is the purpose of the board story today, because for everyone who can get there, there are lots more people who cannot get there, and therefore it feels important to kind of share some of that joy that I think all of us who were at those evenings experienced. So I'm hoping that if the technology works, so those of you who are sitting that way, you may want to look that way for a minute, because I think it's about 8 minutes long, but we think it's worth going for it. So I'm not going to say anything more and just allow, I think roll VT is the normal phrase at this point in time. And I'll hand over to the video.
Hi, I'm Liz Spires and I'm the comms manager here at South East Coast Ambulance Service, and tonight we're celebrating one of 3 award ceremonies marking the long service and the fantastic achievements of our staff. Welcome.
My name's Louisa, I work at EOC in Medway and I'm here tonight getting my 30 years NHS Long Service Award. I'm here with my +1, Becky, who also works at Medway.
Has been really special, but also all the rest of my colleagues in CCAM. It's been amazing, and a special shout out to all the comms team that has put this together.
Yep, Liz has been amazing. She's taking her shoes off now, she's
Absolutely.
done.
We're the safeguarding team, and this evening we've won the CCAM Team of the Year award as part of our work. What's really made a difference is that from our safeguarding work we can see how the organisation is able to recognise where we've got vulnerabilities as far as our patients are concerned, and not only vulnerabilities and recognising them, but have actually done something about it and escalated them up, and we can evidence how we really keep our patients safe across Kent, Surrey and Sussex.
Hi, I'm Margaret Dial. I'm the Director of Quality and Nursing here at CCAM and had the privilege of being at CCAM for the last 16 months. But today I'm here because I've been awarded 40 years of being working consistently in the NHS. So tonight it's just been beautiful celebrating the NHS really, and the ambulance service and the things our people do for the public.
Very, very impressive to see these nominations tonight, and especially the nomination that Jodie made for Emma, because Emma stopped when I had a heart arrest on my bike. She took the initiative and she saved my life.
We've had such a lovely evening tonight, and it's been really special to see Emma accept her award, and to have Jeff present as well has really been lovely. It's been a real special evening that we will remember for a long time.
I've come
I'm here tonight because I nominated the marvellous Sam Garman for Employee of the Year, which he won. Had a great evening, lots of people that I haven't seen for quite a while. Absolutely love these evenings, and hopefully we'll be back next year for my 30th.
My name's Scott Hardy, one of the critical care team leaders. I'm here tonight to enjoy celebrating the Queen's Medal for long service and good conduct, which is questionable, but I've really enjoyed the evening. I think they're great to recognise people's service, people's work. Really enjoyable evening.
Hello, I'm Steve. I was skipper of this amazing team, the Seacam Sailing team, and we're just collecting an award for our victory at the Emergency Services Regatta.
We are the Seacam Sailing team.
Tonight is all about service, and it's one of my core beliefs that service is one of the greatest gifts we can give to one another as human beings, as citizens of this country. And if I've seen nothing else tonight, I'm sure we have all seen it, how much service means to those who give it. And we've also been privileged to be part of those who've received it and see the stories that they have been able to tell that wouldn't have been possible had it not been for the people in this room.
Thank you for coming to the awards ceremony for 2023. And we look forward to seeing you next year as we continue the events in 2024. Thank you.
Well, how do you follow that? Simon, do you want the last word?
I think, Janine, you should have the last word. I mean, I think one of the reasons for doing this is to share. I was just busily recapturing the sentiment I had, the feelings I had being part of it. It was an adventure in chicken, and the very different forms in which chicken can be produced and consumed. But it was also mostly, I was warned about that, but it was mostly a chance to see some truly amazing people doing what they do best. But Janine, what would you like to say?
Yeah, thank you, Simon. I hope that was useful. As I say, we were keen to try and capture a flavour of the evenings for the colleagues who can't come. We'll be using it next year to whip up more nominations again for the commendations. But I think two takeaway points for me. Firstly, how powerful it was to have patients in the room and to see the impact on the staff of seeing those patients there and on the patients themselves. So that was fantastic, and we'll look to try and expand that as much as we can. And secondly, I guess it's a positive reminder as we come into winter when things are tough and, we know we have lots of challenges, how much positivity there is out there from our staff. And I think across all three evenings, there was nothing but positivity. There was no, we've had no negative feedback. There were no negative comments at all. So just really powerful, and we look forward, after a little bit of a rest, to next year. Thank you.
Well said, and we've got further items on the agenda that reinforce the sort of recognition of staff, which is really good. And again, can I just say on the record as well, not only the patient thanks, but also can I give our thanks to the Lord Lieutenancy, because they represent the King at these events, and that means a lot to our staff. It really does, particularly presentation of the last year of the Queen's Medal, in future to become the King's Medal. That certainly is symbolically very important to our people, and I have to say, I get a letter of thanks from them when they attend to say what a wonderful time they've had, rather than us thanking them, which says something about the power of the events. So we are very grateful for their patronage and their ongoing support. We move on now to the next item, which is the long-term workforce plan, specifically our retention plan. And I think, Tim, you're going to welcome online. I know you've had logistic difficulties with train strikes and other things, not being here in person. So, Tim, welcome, and I'll leave you to lead us into the discussion.
Thanks, Dave. For you who don't know me, I'm Widdowson. I'm interim Deputy Director of HR, and I've been with the Trust since April this year. I'm making the assumption that everybody's had a chance to read the paper from Ali. I just want to draw out a few points in that paper, if I may, quite briefly. So looking at the workforce plan and looking particularly at the recruitment pipeline, We launched in May the Quality Improvement Project, which really is about looking towards reducing the time it takes from time to recruit. So we're looking for a 60-day target. But in doing so, what the group decided to do, which was quite helpful, was actually to segment the different parts of recruitment in terms of which departments we were looking at. So, for example, if we look at our normal recruitment, which we categorise around, for example, paramedic cohorts, pathways and apprenticeships, that actually can take a very long time. And the reason it takes so long is that the trust can make an offer between 3 to 9 months, so about 100 to 200 days before the planned start date. This is governed by the completion of the candidate's education. We do begin engagement very early on and are restricted to university timelines as to when they're able to start with it. So that really has an impact when we start publishing how long it takes to actually recruit into post. Again, ECSWs is quite high, and again, that is down to them obtaining C1 or retaking fitness assessments. The recruitment team are constantly moving candidates to different courses to accommodate this, and this again has an impact on time to hire. We have then, as a second category, we have like ad hoc recruitment, like EOC 111 recruitment assessment days. There's been a huge amount of work done on that quite recently, and between the senior teams, EOC 111 and the recruitment team, have been some really good assessment days, and the move has been towards offering people having a job offer in place at the time on the assessment day. So again, that's been really positive, and it means that we've actually managed to reduce the time to hire to just 61 working days, and I think that was quite an achievement compared to where it was before. And then thirdly and fourth, we have bank and international recruitment. So that's a little bit about workforce planning. Sickness absence, that, as you can probably notice, has reduced significantly. It was hovering around 11%, 12%, but now is down to 6%, which is just 1% above our target. And that, in part can be attributed to the joint work between ops managers and HRBPs, HRA colleagues, getting down to make sure that we see people on time and we give them the necessary support and trying to deal with these issues more quickly. So again, the first occupational health, there may be some stuff that involving wellness as well, making sure they get the support so we can get them back to work more quickly, which then takes them out of any long formal process. The third point I'd like to mention, which is quite dear to my heart actually, because one of the reasons I was taken on specifically was to look at employee relations. As I'm sure we're all aware, one of the biggest issues that we currently have in the trust is our high volume of outstanding grievances. And I think we've had a great shift in the past 5 to 6 months. And whilst it is a long journey, there's no two ways about it, it'll take quite a long time to get to where we want to. I have seen some real changes from my own perspective. For example, the ACAS talks with the exec team have resulted definitely in better ways of working with our TU colleagues, and that has a huge impact in management of ER cases. So I have regular contacts with most of the trade union senior colleagues, and we discuss ways of resolving issues informally rather than actually following a formal process. That has had a huge amount of success. Other colleagues in the business partner team, the HRA team, very much understand that when we do get a formal grievance in, we need to triage it very, very quickly so we can actually get a resolution quickly as well. And all those interventions have really helped to start bringing those figures down. And I think it's important to note at this time, although we had sign off, thankfully, for a new ER team, the only person that's actually started with us with that team is actually the head of ER, and he's been with us about 5 weeks. So although we haven't actually had anybody in place because the The head of business partnering has actually been off sick, unfortunately, for quite a number of weeks too. So even with things that are going on as they are, we're still managing to make an impact on these grievances. So when we do get the employee relations team in place over the next 2 or 3 months, I'm expecting to see a significant change and improvement in terms of grievances, the way they're being handled, and indeed closing them down, because there are still quite a few that are outstanding. Coupled with this is over the last couple of weeks, we launched our hearing managers course. We used an external provider for the first course, but we will be bringing that in-house because we've gained all the knowledge from that to do it ourselves. We also run our own investigations course last week. That included some managers and also HR colleagues. The feedback was absolutely tremendous, and I'm really hopeful in the new year that we can start rolling that out. And that, if you like, is just the tip of the iceberg to really support managers. Having bespoke workshops for these guys absolutely is going to help us get to where we need to. So if we look at the actual cases, when I first came here, I think the grievances stood 87. By the end of this month, we are expecting them to be just below 60. Now, you might think that's slow progress, but actually it's pretty good progress, as I say, considering that we haven't had the team in place. The other point I'd just like to mention briefly is about the staff survey. As you probably noticed from the paper, we had a 60% response rate, which is absolutely brilliant. We never had that before, and considering that the trust has actually grown in size, I think that's commendable. And the other point to note with that is the bank response rate was the highest in the country, so that's really, really good. I will be handing over to Tina in a moment to actually talk through the PowerPoint slides. I know that she's going to bring some bits out on that, but if I can invite any questions, that'd be great.
Thanks, Tim. I steered you in incorrectly straight into the retention plan, but you've sort of course corrected and have brought out the highlights from your cover paper. So I think we've got hopefully colleagues have got the full picture there. So was there any particular points, questions you wish of Tim? Is that happy to take a question, Tim first, Tina? Is that? Yeah. So colleagues, you've got the IQR in order to help inform your questions as well. Suba?
Thank you, Chair. Tim, thank you very much. And you've stolen all my thunder for the summary of the P&C report as well. No, thank you. That's really helpful. I just wanted to ask a couple of questions. First of all, it's brilliant to see the reduction in sickness down to 6%. That's a real step forward. So congratulations to everyone on that. I'm a little concerned about the mean length of time it's taking for the grievances to be resolved. When I look at the IQR, that mean length of time seems to be going up, not down. It was on a downward trajectory, but it's gone back up again. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I do. Thanks, Suba. So there have been a number of outstanding grievances that have been kicking around for quite a long time, and I know the exec team will be well aware of certainly one of the issues, and that's to do with promotion and salary and pay. And there are a number of grievances around that. And I know we're in the middle of doing some work to try and get a resolution to that. But they have been bubbling around in the background for a very, very long time. And hopefully when we get to a resolution for that, then that will close down some of those cases. The other cases that come to mind are around rotas, and again, there's been a huge amount of talk about rotas, and I know that we have been looking at launching new rotas, which again, hopefully, will help to reduce those back down. So those are the two significant areas which have a huge impact. And what I'm in the middle of doing, Subo, just for information, is that in terms of preparing further information, we will actually be breaking down the grievances into themes so everybody can understand, even like where the blockages are. But in terms of normal grievances, one-on-one grievances, then those are the ones that we're able to really deal with very, very quickly. It's the ones that, if you like, are much bigger that affect the whole organisation and indeed the wider ambulance service that we are kind of struggling with at the moment. But as I say, we have got a way forward with that right now.
Thank you, colleagues. Michael, then Howard.
Thanks, Tim, as well. I'm just looking at the integrated report. We still have an issue around compliance with mandatory and statutory training. I understand the difficulties. It's a general question to the executive, really, about are we confident that the risk to patients and also internally to our people is not increased by this? Mandatory training covers a whole range of activities. I just would like a little bit more assurance that that is not having an adverse impact on our people and their safety, and also the service that we deliver to patients.
Do you want to comment?
Yes.
Yeah.
Give you a spare one.
I don't often get told I'm not being heard.
Okay, it's all right. It's all right. Thank you.
Couldn't comment,
you know what? That's why I thought I'd say it, Chair. So thank you. So we have a pretty robust programme this year for statutory and mandatory training. There's always some challenges around reporting in a timely fashion because there's always a bit of a manual upload. What I can tell you is we've also, through the Education Training Development Group, have been looking specifically around some clinical training of where people might have missed things for a couple of years. So putting some safeguardings going forward around that as well. There will be a paper coming in February to board, which is about a training programme for the next 3 years, because the ask has been we need to stop this being an annual cycle, but actually being much more planned over 3 years. And interestingly, the words statutory and mandatory tend to be used as a catch-all for an awful lot of stuff that's just and additional guidance that comes out through other directions. So we're trying to unpick that to be very clear what is contractual, what is legal, what is trust priorities. So we do have a programme this year. I'm confident that we are on track to deliver the statutory and mandatory components of it. Different places in different places at this point, but we are monitoring it through the Education Training and Development Group.
And Tim, did you want to say anything about the well-being of CCAM people?
So in terms of well-being, there is a lot of work going on with the well-being team right now, and we're looking at different options, because one of the concerns that we have right now is that perhaps we don't have, and this came up at a meeting this morning actually, maybe we need to expand our service in terms of people who have got some potentially mental health issues that they need support with. And whilst we do offer a good service and it is recognised as being a great service, the comments that have been fed back to us even today is that actually it's not quite enough. So it's a piece of work that we're definitely going to be doing and looking at other options in terms of what does our wellness offer look like. And that may include...
Sorry, my specific question, and it's my fault, was really where we are not meeting our mandatory training or statutory training, that there is no potential adverse impact that could impact on, two impacts there, on the well-being of CCAM people.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, well, I can't say categorically that there'll be no impact with people not having that training. I think it's important that people do have that training. And to Emma's point, there may be training included in that which maybe doesn't fit squarely in that position.
Okay, I think Margaret wanted to come in, Tim, so just to help on this, but that's fine.
Yeah,
Thank you.
so
So, Michael, I think you've asked a really good question, and certainly I've taken away that it's worth us doing a scope to see about the patient safety side, which you also mentioned, and I think, Tim, we could link with you just to see, what is being picked up, what isn't being picked up. So what's the data telling us, and then what would be the implications for that? So that's a piece of work we'll take from here.
Okay, we know the action with Margaret and with Tim. Howard, and then I'll bring in Tom online.
I just want to raise this point about time to hire. Thank you for the clarification on that. Can I suggest that we take a look at the IQR statistic? Because at the moment it's a bit of a nonsense comparison between the target and the actual, for the reasons you have now explained, namely the paramedic university timing. Can we strip that out and show it separately or something? Because we've got a comparison of 130 against 60, which just raises questions that is not helpful. Could you take that up, please? Thanks.
Okay, noted. Tom Quinn.
Thank you, Chair. So really, I was coming back to Michael's earlier question about statutory mandatory training. Do we have an analysis, and maybe this will come to People Committee, of the areas of the different elements of the mandatory training where we're behind where we should be? Because we see the 75% or whatever sort of global picture, but are there areas of the statutory mandatory training that are consistently lower than we would want them to be, where we need to take specific action? That's the first question. The second thing is a challenge to all of us on the board, really, that when we talk about well-being, it's not just about the reactive work that is done and to a very high quality by our wellness hub, but actually it's about how we conduct ourselves and the decisions we take, and how everything we do, we take into account what the impact on our people might be.
Yeah. Thank you, Tom, for that. That's well said. Emma, do you want to comment on the...
We do have that data. I don't have it immediately to hand by module and by individual component. It is looked at through the Education Training Development Group, which does report into the People Committee, and part of the plan that will come through that route for the next year will evidence some of that going forwards, but I haven't got it right here to hand.
Just to say we can pick that up. So Tim and I can do some work and bring to the ETD group.
So can we
remit
that to the People Committee to do a bit of a clarification on mandatory training and ensure the information is fit for purpose so the board can exercise its role? So thank you for that. Tina, do you want to come in with your presentation?
Thank you, Chair, and I'll just pick up on a couple of quick points, knowing that the conversation is probably more rich than the presentation. We have done an extensive consultation and engagement piece. I was on a call this morning at 7 o'clock with trying to get to more areas of our people in order to be able to ensure that we continue to have that dialogue about what's important for the retention plan. In the presentation, I'll draw you straight to slide 10, and just want to go through the key principles around how this has come about and talk a little bit about our pledges. The important thing for us was really that this continues to be a live plan, and that it really needs to address the reasons for people leaving. So we've taken that information from our staff survey, our exit conversations, but equally things like our leadership visits, our management being able to talk about when they've had conversations with their people, and these engagement sessions. It's not just about the retrospective leaving, but also the things that people are talking about that they would say would make them stay. Our next principle was around being really aware of inclusion and diversity is absolutely at the forefront of our minds, but that will really impact and really influence how we look at this retention piece differently, which leads into point 3, being that we need to be creative and we need to be brave and we need to think about those things as we take some of these more difficult, more tricky ones forward that might end up having a choice to make around what our rotas might look like, what our places of work might look like. And each of those, because some of these will be quite difficult or quite extensive, is really they must be measurable. We need to know how those levers are impacting these things and not kind of just, throw everything out there in the hope that something lands. It needs to be very architectured. So moving on to the next slides, these were our pledges in being able to take this piece forward, and it really does bring it back to the individual in this space. So you can read them there, but about controlling our people being empowered at their level to say, I've got control over my working time, being flexible, really embedding into that career development piece and understanding that, particularly as we do the trust strategy. Promoting happiness, promoting health, that wellness piece, the total reward piece, so it's more than just your pay packet, but when we pay people, we need to pay them accurately. We need to go right back to the basics, get their pay right, get their annual leave right, let them finish on time, and give them good meal breaks. You know, those are some of the real basics. And on the next slide, you'll see that then we've been able to individualise that so that each of our people can understand this. It shouldn't be a plan that's discussed here. It's a plan that's understood by our people. I won't read through each of those for you. The last slide I wanted to draw your attention to is slide 15, which talks about how this aligns with other programs of work. Again, a really key piece to this. So it picks up on some of the housekeeping actions, for example, but we're absolutely taking these ideas through, especially for the strategy conversations, because what we don't want is to have all of these ideas saying actually flexibility is the key issue for our people, but our strategy delivers something that's not aligned to flexibility at all, as just a really simple example. And I'm just going to take the opportunity on that slide 15 to bring to the board's attention, out of the housekeeping actions, that from last board up till today, I'm pleased to advise that our reverse mentoring program is going ahead. We have external funding and it's looking like it will be ready to launch in January. Just taking an opportunity. I'm happy for questions, Chair.
That's really good news, Tina, about that. We have before us the retention plan, so it's our job as the board to say to agree that today. So are there any questions, comments about the plan? Is it comprehensive enough? Any additions? Liz?
Thanks. And Tina, thanks for this. And I think huge, great progress. I'd just like to understand how, and I know it's part of our culture and behaviours, but this is a way of working really differently throughout the organisation. How are you going to get that level of buy-in from those naysayers who we've always done it this way?
It's a question probably for everything we're doing at the moment, and it's really interesting actually because and you know, myself being in this environment for a long time now, actually the naysayers haven't been as strong as I would have expected. I think actually we've got a lot more people saying, about time, thank you. So we're getting some really good feedback, we're getting some really good challenge that it's probably less about naysaying and more about, well, how are we going to do that? They're aware of the financial pressures, they're aware of the constant change that we have, and it's really positive to be able to say, and when I say, I mean, we've got so many different places now where key leadership, a key executive, through the big conversation, through the work that Janine's doing, to actually directly say to someone, because the board is buying into this. This absolutely comes from full support from where it needs to. And I think that's really helping the discussion. So it's there, and we are open to that challenge and inviting it, because if we don't have that conversation, then the culture and everything never moves on.
Great, thanks.
Sybil?
Thank you, Chair. Tina, thank you. And I really welcome this. It's really nice to see this. It's a really important part of our culture piece as well. Two challenges for you, if I may. First of all, how does this link with the equality action plan? Because when I look at the RES and the DES, we're actually going backwards in terms of diversity across our workforce. So that concerns me. So how does that feed into this? And the second thing is you've put there as one of the important pillars that there is time for one-to-ones. We are currently not doing very well against our target of 85%. We're at 58%, and it's a problem. So how are we going to reverse that and make sure, in order to get the retention that we see, we get those meaningful one-to-ones?
Okay, so I'll take both of them. The first one, I would say it would probably help if we unpick it further at the People Committee, because I probably don't have the level of detail that we need for the RES and the DES right now. But our diversity lead, so Carol Ann, has been part of bringing the retention plan together. So she's had actually a lot of input around, and especially as we take the next piece forward around the actions and developing really those interventions, Carol Ann's key to that, as is a number of our staff networks. So we've openly invited them because we don't always see it in that first sweep around about how we now make this more inclusive and ensure that we are covering the things that maybe don't come to the forefront, such as when I talk about the flexible working, what seems, flexible working, but actually when you start talking to different groups through those networks, it's about things that might not be obvious, such as, well, I just need part-time working, actually I need all these different things. So making sure that's part of the early stages of those action plans is key, but I can take that one away and make sure that I've got more detail for you there. In regards to the one-to-one, so there's probably two things in this space that we're working on. One of them is the appraisals, which is the report that comes through, and yeah, that's well behind where it should be. It has been referred back to the senior management group in order to have more oversight of that and bring that back to a space that we are more comfortable with. But one-to-ones goes well beyond appraisals, and we have some work occurring at the moment to understand how we do more of that, how we make more time for it, and that's where the piece around what the rotas might end up looking like, how we actually build more time in, how many staff do we need in order to be able to free people up more often. And it's not just in frontline operations, that's in the 999, that's in the 111, that's also across of our corporate departments where they're more dispersed. So I don't have the answer for you, but if we are going to make sure we've got good connection with our people and then our people have the opportunity to engage and feed in, then this is a requirement. And that's why I was saying some of these things are going to be tricky. We're going to have to make decisions around, well, if we are going to say that that's a really important thing, then that might cost us a bit more in regards to we need more people. We need to make sure that we free people up. And that's the balance on achieving, making sure we give, a good response rate while we build our workforce up. So it's there. I think Emma wants to add
quick
to that.
comment around then. I want to keep then David, and we really must move on because we are getting behind time
Yeah,
again.
no, just very briefly. And the one-to-one is not only having the time, but making sure it's a constructive conversation, which we know. So I met a young lady by the name of Kat DeVito the other day, who's an OTL working out of Medway and Sheppey. She's actually taken on board a lead role, working with a whole group of stakeholders across the trust to create some templates and some supportive function so that one-to-ones are recorded. They are more constructive to help guide those who might feel that that would be more constructive for them as well. So there's a quality piece, but she sent it through to me, the proposal of how much time people are asking for this to be agreed, and that will go into I'm going to call it the training plan, but in essence it's that component plan of making sure we have that. But I wanted to raise it because this is our people owning the space to tell us how they think they want to do it.
Yes, that's a really good point. And Suba, can we pick this up in the People Committee in terms of getting some appropriate measurements in for this and definition as well? But it sounds there are some stirrings of progress in the front line for sure. David, final question on this matter?
Thank you. It's I think a comment and a question. One, just in support of the retention plan, I think we have a plan that supports a strategy that we signed off 6 months ago. I think the question that someone asked us is, do we think it's ambitious enough? And I think the answer would be, probably can be more ambitious, but it's a great blueprint that gives us an opportunity to start a conversation around how do we then evolve and continuously improve this plan. And I think to your question, Subo, around retention, for instance, that's a perfect example of where I think we need to be using the data to test the impact of this, because we may find that it's having impact in some of our people, but not in all of our people, and then that will allow us to refine the plan further. So my ask of the board would be that we keep this alive through the People Committee, and that we test the impacts. We're seeing it here with the paper that doesn't cover is, when are we going to be testing the impact for the first time so we can put it through a systematic continuous improvement cycle. But I would just wanted to voice my view in support of the plan and the fact that we need to see this come again probably in 6 to 12 months time to probably through the People Committee review, and then make that just part of the forward cycle for the board.
Okay, Michael, final word from the.
I promise you,
Simon has the last word.
It's very quick. I really support the reverse mentoring. I think that's brilliant. And a plea, you may not want it, but I would hope you would include the board in that, because as a board member you learn so much from that. So please, thank you.
We absolutely will be including board members. In fact, it will be an expectation of all board members that they take part. So thank you for the offer. We were going to take you up on it anyway. More serious, joking apart, look, at the core of this, and just to remind people what we are signing off today, is the slide that says our pledges in action. Okay, so that's what I need people to focus on here and now, because I would say, and I am permitted to say this because we actually had the formal joint partnership forum meeting come back into existence last week. I'm pleased to report that is back in the land of the living. And we took this to them, and they, as a group of staff side unions, endorsed this plan. So can I just focus us on, are we supporting these pledges? Because we need to move into the business of implementing these pledges over the next few months, and at its heart, this is our retention plan in delivery mode.
Thank you. I would say we've been here before with a variety of other plans in the past, and this time it's got to stick. And we have. That's why I think realism. I agree with Tina's points earlier on around ambition, yes, but let's make it realistic ambition. and not shoot for the moon in the first instance. We've got to get this right. We have to get the basics right in this organisation on behalf of our staff. So, colleagues, are you happy to support this plan? We'll obviously monitor it through the People Committee, but this is something I want brought back to the board regularly, not just the People Committee, but by others as well. As a board, we need to take an interest, and we'll triangulate this with our visits to speak to our staff. And that's something which does give me some heart, as well as just the return of the staff survey. Just when you engage our staff in the recent past, I have to say, the conversation is a lot more rich and positive. Not just the happy events in station visits and others. The conversation back from our people is, subjectively to me anyway, a lot more positive. But we've got to really ground this in fact and objectivity. So we sign off this and remit to the executive for lead action, and it will be rolled back to the board.
And as I said, I was
really
pleased that the staff side also supported this, which I think is a notable indication of progress. So
yeah,
my thanks to them for their engagement in
absolutely
this.
But they'll be watching and they'll be supporting and cheering us on, but also will point out when we don't deliver. So we really have got to get this right this time, I think it's fair to say. So thank you for that. Let's moving on to again onto this important section in terms of our improving our culture. The reward and recognition paper, which is in your pack. Janine, you've done the work on this. Thank you.
I'm really pleased to introduce today this paper, which includes a proposed integrated recognition framework. I think we've needed something like this for a while. It builds on some of the things that we do already to recognise our people, so the awards we've seen today, some of the other bits, but also introduces some new mechanisms which will hope to address some of the feedback we've had, that the awards are great but they happen once a year, that people want more regular opportunities for mechanism, and other feedback we've had. So it builds on what we have already but looks to expand our approach. I'll call out probably three key highlights of the new strands. The first is our online reward and recognition platform, which will be going live in January. We're really excited about this. We'll be the first ambulance trust in the country to introduce this. It gives a framework for peer-to-peer and manager-to-peer recognition and peer-to-manager, a range of options that colleagues can use through the framework, which will include some financial recognition within a given framework. So there will be occasions when that's warranted and other occasions when a simple e-card or a thank you will suffice. But we really feel that that reflects what our colleagues have asked for, which is a broader range of options, and actually the opportunity to say to colleagues sometimes, you did a really good job, have a coffee on me, or for a bunch of flowers, for example, for something more significant. So I think the key with the platform is it provides a framework, but it also gives flexibility. It also, I think, leads very well to, I know, something Simon and the rest of the exec are very keen to take forward, which is the autonomy of our local managers to lead and recognise their own teams. So without that having to sit centrally, giving managers across the organisation the authority and the permission and some money to be able to do that themselves within a framework. So we're really excited about this. I think it's been a long time coming. It's lots of work to get it implemented. You know, absolutely right and proper that the IG, the governance, the finance is all sorted behind the scenes, so that when we launch, it's a smooth, you know, well-rehearsed platform that people can start to use. So really, really looking forward to that. Other new mechanisms in the framework, a monthly recognition award for colleagues that hopefully will enable us to share some of the joy that we saw at the awards throughout the year on a monthly basis. I think that's going to take a little bit of time to build, but I think lots of us have seen that work well elsewhere, and if we introduce it in the right way, we're very positive about that. We're also very keen that we do better, frankly, in recognising our colleagues who are retiring. That has a pervasive impact back into the organisation when one doesn't do it well, because it makes existing colleagues feel if we can't even recognise someone who's given a lot of years service, you know, we're not getting things right. So I think partly through the platform, partly through involving Simon, Chairman, Ned's potentially, there is more we could do to make those colleagues feel recognised at the end of their careers as well. So I think it builds on what we've got, it introduces some new mechanisms. It's manageable at the moment. I think we will need to look at the resource implications moving forward, because these things can be quite administrative heavy to make sure it's done right. And if we're doing it, we're going to do it right. So I want to make sure we're able to support this properly. So we'll need to think about that moving forward. I think considering ways that other colleagues around the board can be involved moving forward, also there may be opportunities. Platform, we're looking at that going live at the end of January. Be, you know, exciting about that. But I would ask colleagues for any comments and hopefully your support for the proposed framework. Thank you.
Colleagues, any initial questions? I think hopefully not a long discussion on this. I hope we're all going to row behind this with enthusiasm, quite frankly, because this has been a long time coming, and I think I know from private conversations outside the meeting this has been something which people wanted to see for some time. So, David?
Just a comment, Janine, because we've talked about this, the very supportive of the plan. I think it's really good. Can we talk a little bit about what we were going to be doing? Because when we've done historically, and the feedback we've received from our support staff in particular is that sometimes it's difficult to get recognised as a support member of staff because obviously we're so clinically led. So can you just talk to that a little bit?
So I think absolutely one of the key drivers of this is to ensure all our people have opportunities to feel recognised. So the awards is a successful product, but we can always make things better. So actually we'll be looking to review some of the categories next year to give broader opportunities for support colleagues. It's always difficult when a judging panel is weighing up saving the life of a patient against some fantastic work done in another area to pick one of those. So it's probably not fair they are being judged against each other. What can we do to expand that? I think the Employee of the Month gives more licence for colleagues in other areas. I'll just say we've just launched our Christmas Stars initiative, which is recognised in here. We're already 30% up, she says slightly nervously, on the 7th of December on nominations from last year. And we do see strong nominations from colleagues in support services for that. So I think it's just broadening the scope, David, and hopefully people will feel there are more ways in which everyone can be recognised.
Look at Team CCAM, and CCAM is more than the frontline clinical staff, it's those support staff as well. So it's important. That's great. That's a good answer. Thank you. Any other final comments?
I just wanted to throw my huge support behind this. I think this is great to see, and I think we should enthusiastically embrace it. I know from speaking to frontline staff, this is something they are waiting for. I think it's a big marker of cultural progress, so we should be looking at how many people pick it up, run with it. But I just want to say well done, and I think it's great to see it here. We now need to get on with it.
Thank you. And can I thank you? I think that I'm happy to say the board have agreed it. Can I just pick up the point that Jean made for your action, Simon, is to ensure though there is some administration behind this that means it runs smoothly, because there's nothing worse than these things go wrong because someone's not turned up at the right time in the right place. So we'll leave it to you for the detail. But just say this is warmly welcomed by all.
A very final comment without looking to delay things. This is absolutely about all of our people. So the reason why the new award isn't called Employee of the Month, because this includes our volunteers as well. So I think for the first time we are looking to wrap a framework around all of our people. So the term our people is used deliberately. Thinking about your comments about the very positive volunteer conference, they are a significant part of Team CCAM, and hopefully will expand in the future. So this has been designed to not just be accessible to our employees, but to our volunteers as well.
I think it was great to see Davies and others engage our volunteers in our future strategy discussions. So that's a really good start. Let's move on. So let's move on to another really important part of really changing our culture, improving our culture in CCAM, and this is a more challenging area, but one in which we really have got to get right. So the Sexual Safety Charter, which Margaret is going to introduce.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for hearing this paper. It is a privilege to bring it because I do think this is a really important moment. What we're asking is for the board to agree to become signatory of the Sexual Safety Charter that the NHS England launched in September, following huge engagement with people with lived experience across the NHS and colleges, users, and lots of other partners that work in this field. So all trusts and ICBs and Royal Colleges are being asked to become signatories, and to date over 160 have, with some coming on each week. What we're asking is that the trust commits to taking and enforcing a zero-tolerance approach. That immediately tells us we need to define what that is, and what I plan to do is, as the steering group takes hold, which it has started to, is come back to the board to really debate that and give a concrete picture of what that would look like, which feeds into Subo's earlier question. I am going to take time to read through the Sexual Safety Charter because I feel that this is important, and it's important that we understand what we're signing up to. So you can follow it, but please forgive me, but it is something that needs to be done in a public board. So those who work, train and learn within the healthcare system have the right to be safe and feel supported at work. Organisations across the healthcare system need to work together and individually to tackle unwanted, inappropriate and or harmful sexual behaviour in the workplace. We all have a responsibility to ourselves and our colleagues and must act if we witness these behaviours. As signatory to this charter, then, the board will commit to a zero-tolerance approach to any unwanted, inappropriate and or harmful sexual behaviour towards our workforce. We commit to the following 10 principles and actions to achieve this, and our commitment is to achieve this by July 2024. Number 1, we will actively work to eradicate sexual harassment and abuse in the workplace. 2, we will promote a culture that fosters openness and transparency and does not tolerate unwanted, harmful or inappropriate sexual behaviours. 3, we will take an intersectional approach to the sexual safety of our workforce, recognising certain groups will experience sexual harassment and abuse at a disproportionate rate. 4, we will provide appropriate support for those in our workforce who experience unwanted, inappropriate and or harmful sexual behaviours. 5, we will clearly communicate standards of behaviour. This includes expected action for those who witness inappropriate, unwanted and or harmful sexual behaviour. 6, we will ensure appropriate, specific and clear policies are in place. They will include appropriate and timely action against alleged perpetrators. 7, we will ensure appropriate, specific and clear training is in place. 8, we will ensure appropriate reporting mechanisms are in place for those experiencing these behaviours. 9, we will take all reports seriously and appropriately and take timely action, which will be taken for all cases. 10, we will capture and share data on prevalence and staff experience transparently. These commitments will apply to everyone in our organisation equally.
Clearly, there's a lot of work to do there. We're already undertaking a gap analysis. The steering group is together. I'm working very closely with Ali and with Tina because this is a very big cultural piece of work. But it's one that we need to be bold and clear and brave on and away from any kind of emotion. So processes and training will be really important. The gap analysis is stating what good looks like across all 10 of those commitments, and I'm happy to bring that back at any time. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Margaret. Well introduced and very important. We have discussed this on a number of occasions as a board, and we made various statements in the past about our what we hope would have been zero tolerance towards inappropriate behaviour. But what this does is codify within a national framework our expectations. So it's not just CCAM speaking out, it's the whole NHS speaking out with a specific element of CCAM. So on a personal note, really welcome it. But colleagues, are you happy to get behind this and support? Liz?
Absolutely happy to support the Sexual Safety Charter. I think I just want to raise that this puts additional responsibilities and accountabilities on all of us sitting around this table to have really difficult, challenging conversations when we're out there, but also to address issues that we find. And it may be that some of us would require support and mentoring in those. I'm sure us that are clinicians are very used to having those conversations, but it is difficult and can be awkward. So just assurance around that, please.
Absolutely. Thank you for being so honest, Liz, because I don't think it's easy